Good afternoon, Rob Grimes with the IFBTA, and I'm really pleased to do another one of our Meet Our Members, although I will say before we get started here that we have met this member before. We've met the individual. You may not know the company, you will know the company, and I will assume that you actually do know the company, SageNet. But I'm really pleased to have a Meet Our Member conversation with Courtney Radke, and he is the Vice President of Innovation at SageNet. So welcome back once again. It's been a long time. So what are those trends in the industry that you think are maybe perhaps undervalued today, but really should be valued more, that are going to make them more successful that you can help bring to the table?
We've seen over the last couple of years that if you were not afraid to dip your toes in the water, if you were not afraid to get a little bit ahead of the curve, now I'm not saying bleeding edge because sometimes that's tough,
Sure.
But where have we seen some of the most successful restaurants over the last couple of years? It's those that saw market indicators coming or saw demands coming of off-premises ordering, digital ordering, moving to that, dipping their toes in AI assisted, voice assisted. They were doing that a couple of years ago before the market or geo events necessitated that they had to. So
Right.
Being able to be thoughtful in your planning around technology investments, not for the today, but for tomorrow, getting just even a year or two ahead. If something happens in the industry, now you're 5 years ahead of the competition. You're now capturing market share versus just surviving. So we've seen that. And an area where I think that's extremely critical now is, in the next couple of years, I think we'll surpass 50 billion IoT devices online. And
well, absolutely, especially because they're connecting the kitchen equipment and everything else to it. The whole place, Right. I wanted to say wired, but I can't really say wired. They're not wired, but they're certainly connected.
Wired, wireless, Bluetooth, LoRaWAN, all of these different protocols, bringing all of these devices online that have very little standards and have a lot of security risks that they bring with them. So a lot of organizations had to deploy those technologies, but it wasn't necessarily the technology team inside of those brands that were deploying it. It was deployed by marketing, some third party that they brought in.
Sure.
But they had to support it. It had to be on their network of yesterday. And so getting ahead and thinking of that network as the foundation, everything rests on that. Everything has to be secured by the network that all of this is flowing on. The more brands get towards that and see that the network is so critical to everything that they're trying to drive, that will be huge. And I think organizations are doing it. A lot of times because they found out when the network breaks how bad it can be, they want to get ahead of that and make sure that the network is never the cause of the problem. It's the enabler of letting them do these things more efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that people don't always think about the future themselves as to where it is. And, you get a situation, like a health problem that happened over the last few years that causes new ways of doing business. All of a sudden, everybody's doing business that way. But when I take a look at what's going on in the future, and you're talking about the connection and where you have to put your technology, let's not talk about somebody who's doing online ordering. I get that. That's on their device, right? But the second that we go to, for instance, remote locker pickup, hot and cold locker pickup, not just curbside, but perhaps at intermediary, or the second we start using bots to go ahead and deliver food, and not just a person who's doing it. Yeah. Now we've just expanded the connections we have, and it's still our connections, our routing, our customer service.
Right. And you bring that up. I saw that, Shake Shack, I believe, is testing that out with robots and kiosks. But you're right. It doesn't magically just happen. You're not programming it to tell it where it goes and then it finds its way. It's connected all the time. And that still has to tie back into that original point or path of purchase. I talk to, the industry at industry events and to our customers all the time we truly understand that your transaction, your relationship with that customer doesn't just begin and end when they walk in the door, when they place an order on the phone. There's a lot of things that happen before that to get them there, right? In a business to consumer. Right. Omnichannel. And there's a lot of things that it takes after that to make sure that you keep them as a customer. All of this requires connectivity in that unified ecosystem model. So the moment now you expand that beyond your four walls and you have drones delivering something or robots delivering something.
We don't know what it's going to be, but we do know that our footprint is going to expand.
It is.
It may be a vending machine, restaurant in a box. We don't know what it's going to be, but we're still delivering that service. It's still our product. It's still within our ecosystem. It just might not be located where we traditionally have been located. So we just don't know.
And that's fine. And organizations are starting to really, really see that it can't be a different experience for the customer because I'm using a different technology to facilitate
Absolutely.
it.
By the way,
same
the
as we,
airline industry understood that because
yeah.
you had two or three reservation systems, and they put different front ends, but those are still the same reservation systems being used by I don't know how many places you can go ticket and make a reservation.
Transparency to the customer so that they don't think they're going into a different environment. They want to be safe. They want to feel secure to say, I am here. I am your customer, no matter how I'm interfacing with you. It always looks like you're coming into my brand, not somebody else's. We're trying to build that and help build that for the customers as well.
So, early on, using the example of the easy button, but you were saying that, some of the big groups, it's easy, right? And some of the smaller groups, it's a little more challenging. Is there a sweet spot in there of type of customer that SageNet works with, in size and scope, maybe geography? Are there some parameters here that one should know, or do you really service all ends of the industry?
We service all ends of the industry. So we have, smaller regional based organizations that have a couple hundred sites, but we also have the multi-brand, several thousand site deployments spread across the US and North America that we support all of that. There's not kind of a niche spot or a size that makes us more comfortable or uncomfortable. What it is that makes us more comfortable is the organizations that internally they have aligned their business strategy with technology, with marketing already, where we're not having to try to sell up through an organization to say, this is why technology is important. They already get it. And so
do you think that they already get it today? Like, I can imagine the challenges of years ago. And when I say years ago, I'm not talking about years and years ago. I'm talking about 5-6 years ago, just trying to convince people to go ahead and get high-speed internet access that was secure because people predicted that maybe it wouldn't be on-premise types of computing. Well, do you get that kind of resistance today, or do you go in today, especially with franchisees or smaller startups, that they really get it and understand and they embrace what you're doing and they're willing to spend the money?
I think they get it and they understand it. The problem being is technology is still expensive. And so we want to make sure that when they make the right investment, that it's a long-lived, future-proofed investment. Connectivity is not free. You said, we had trouble even just a couple of years ago getting organizations to understand that the faster, more reliable internet connection is going to be a benefit to your business. And now we're saying multiple redundant, faster internet connections is going to be, but we have to help them build the ROI. You have to have the bandwidth. The bandwidth for me is, like somebody's paycheck. You may get a raise, you may get a promotion, you may make more money, but you always find a way to spend that money, right? You buy a different car or house. That's bandwidth. You will always find a way to use your bandwidth. And so
people always spend above their means.
You always, and it's the same in bandwidth. So it's not necessarily about more. More is better, but use it more effectively. That's where we're trying to move them towards. So then we can say, you truly did get an ROI. Your 8 hours of outages that you had over the last year, across your environment is now 4 because you did this. And they can truly attribute that back to, well, that's better sales. That's better experience for the customer. It's our job to provide that value statement of this is where technology is going to save you money. It will be an investment up front. But if you do it right, it should pay for itself.
In the early days, as we think about this, and I've done a lot of work in the hotel industry, there was always that debate, do I actually pay to wire to hotel rooms? What's the cost per room? Then it became, what's the cost per wireless to get to the rooms? Because they knew that they were going to need it. And then if you talk about IoT, you had the door locks and you had all the other stuff connected in there. Well, you think about the restaurant environment, it's the same situation. Almost everything that you might put in, from any of your kitchen equipment to your fryers to whatever it is, everything is now connected. But to your point, it is not about putting in things for technology's sake. It's enhancing what you do using technology. But what happens is since we no longer talk about the size of the pipe or even whether you're going to put bandwidth in and whether you're going to get it from the local cable company or whether you're going to get it from somebody else, we don't talk about that. So what happens is the more they have, the more now that it's like my phone. I just keep adding apps as I'm sitting around, but I use them, hopefully. But I keep adding apps, and end user customers keep coming up with payment types. They keep coming up with some new app they want to use while they're there. And you got to really stay ahead of it. There's just no telling.
Yeah. I agree. It's, it's hard to keep up with that too, because we can innovate so fast and we can try to think 3 steps ahead, but the end of the day, the customer is going to tell us where we need to go, and our customer and their end customer. It's where they're pushing the market is where we have to try to stay ahead of, lead them in the right direction, tell them what's the best way to deploy this technology, support this technology. Ultimately, they may have their own decisions, and we have to support that as well. But as trusted advisors, hopefully we've built enough equity with them to say, for them to come to us and ask what's the right way to do it versus we're going to do this.
After 27 years and a company built by people who came from the restaurant industry, and which other are your primary industries besides restaurants?
So restaurant, retail, and you can think of any different type of retail. And we have, C-store, we have hospitality, we have, oil and gas. We're in a lot of different industries.
But they all intersect. They're all related. They're peripheral industries, right?
Similar challenges. Maybe you solve them in a different way. We have our they say legacy, but I think it's pretty cool, traditional, coming back into the fold satellite business. So we've got a lot of different areas that we can focus on, and it continues to spread out into different customer user bases. It's the same challenges by and large, maybe a little smaller, maybe a little bigger here. But it's how we design the solution specifically for that industry. Because solving it for a restaurant may be different than solving it for retail, may be different than solving it for convenience stores. But we can kind of build towards whatever their
But those things actually cross over. So having that experience, that probably, by the way, is a differentiator for you as a company, because you have specialized in certain vertical niches that actually are related, use common types of systems, versus people that are just generalists and they just do everything. Do you see your guys do you see SageNet staying focused on certain industry verticals, or are we all of a sudden going to see you just doing everything out there?
I think it's going to stay on certain industry verticals because that's where we've seen the industry going. But you're right in that it's kind of blurred lines. Convenience stores now have restaurants in them, or they're restaurants themselves, right? They're, they make the fifth largest pizza provider in the U.S. is a traditional convenience store, right? And so I think it's good for us to hyper focus and make sure that we maintain our mindset on verticalization. And then as we bring more talent and innovation in, that they have that restaurant, retail, hospitality experience, because that's what the customer's looking for. Know my business, not just try to get my business.
There you go. Thank you very much. Rob Grimes with the IFBTA, Meet Our Member, with Courtney Radke of SageNet. And thank you for joining us today.